All right. Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing this Monday morning? Ask the Expert Show. I'm your host, Gary Cassady, and we got a very special guest today. Her name is Jennifer Mclntyre from Bridge Title. Let's bring her on. All right. Hi, Jennifer. How are you? Uh-oh. Technical difficulties. Can you hear me? You're live. I
I'm d-
think
I'm
she.
doing great. How are you?
Oh, there we go. Yeah, you kind of froze there for a second. So, yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, it's chopping in a little bit,
Okay.
but I got you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it might be the internet. It's raining out, so I don't. We might have a bad connection. So we'll kind of do the best we can and keep moving forward. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, Jennifer, and why you're the expert on title work.
Oh, well, I appreciate it. So my name is Jennifer Mclntyre. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing for Bridge Title and Escrow. I like to say that the reason why I feel like I'm an expert is because I'm very immersed in the whole process. My clients are like friends, and I look at every transaction, whether it's big or small. I understand how important it is, and I think it's with every single transaction. There's always something new. I'll tell you, Gary. I've seen something new. You think you've seen it all? I'm sure you too are the same way, and something else crazy
Yeah.
shows up for sure.
Yep. Yeah. How long you been in the title business?
I've been in the title business for 3 years, but I've been in sales for 25. And
Okay.
ultimately, title, I mean, the people behind the scenes, the numbers people, the title people are really the experts in title per se, as far as the numbers. But really, title is an extension of sales and a relationship building. And it's really
Yeah.
important, I think, for that to be. I think a lot of people don't even factor in title. We're kind of like the redheaded stepchild. It's like, oh, got to do title. But I think people don't realize that we can be a
Yeah.
great asset to helping you grow your business.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, we both deal with a lot of real estate investors. You guys deal with, like multiple stuff. I mean, refinancing paperwork, a lot of that stuff. But what exactly is a title company, Jennifer? Like, why do we
Yeah,
need one?
good
What is that?
question. I think a lot of people don't realize that one, we're heavily regulated. And I would say the best way to describe a title company is we're kind of like a hybrid between a financial institution and an insurance company.
Yeah.
And we are regulated by the Ohio Department of Insurance. Most of my clients, when I tell them that I have to have a license, my owner has to have a license, the escrow officers have to have licenses, a lot of people
Yeah.
don't realize that. So we fall under the umbrella of insurance, but
Okay.
really we're kind of a hybrid between a financial institution and insurance. And our
Okay.
job to make sure, obviously, our job obviously is to make sure that the title is clean and the transfer of everything is clear. But it's much more than that too, because there's the whole financial side where the escrow officers are dealing with the banks. We also are in charge of filing everything, as everybody knows there. I mean, holding escrow
Yeah.
money, the boring stuff, but the most important, I think.
Yeah, no, when I first got into the real estate business and done, investments, things of that nature, I didn't even realize that I was told that, you don't even really need a title company to do to file your deeds and you can just go down to the courthouse and file it. But there's really, you can really hurt yourself by not doing that, right? I mean, it can be done, yes, but is it the best thing to do? Absolutely not. In my opinion, not. So why do we want to go to that title company and get the title insurance and things of that nature?
Well, I can give you a great example. Especially about 25% of our business is investors, wholesalers, flippers. And as you know, Gary, a lot of the times you're dealing with houses that have been in the city, or, somebody hasn't lived in it in a while, or grandma owned it and she died and gave it to her son. And what we're finding, what is so challenging right now, is that yes, anybody can print off a deed, do a quit claim deed, take it down to the
Yep.
courthouse and file it. But the problem is they don't care what's on it. They only care if it's
And they don't.
outside of the margins. Because if it's
Yeah.
outside the margins, they charge us a couple bucks a page. It's not their job to make sure it's correct. And because Ohio is a dour state, that's where most of the issues come from. Like, I can give you a great example. We had an investor who had a property at another title company, and it was quit claimed. The grandma quit claimed it to somebody, and somebody else quit claimed it to somebody else. And they were taking forever, and the investor pulled it and said, "Hey, Jennifer, can you work on this for me?" And a lot of people don't realize that we're not just looking at the transaction between the buyer and seller now. We look at every single time this property has changed hands. And this deed was back in the 70s. And in
Wow.
Ohio, because right, so there was that we were looking at 5 different transactions over the life of this property. Back in the 70s, somebody quit claimed it, and they did not have because it's a dour state, did not have marital status on the deed. And we see this all the time because people just download a quit claim deed off the internet. They don't specify that I'm in Ohio, I'm in a dour state. So that we had to track down these people from the 70s. And if they were married, which they were, that spouse had dower right interest in a house in 2020.
Wow. So what
And
would
the other title
happen if
company,
like maybe they were one of the spouses had died or something? So since it
that's a
was
great
back in the
question.
70s.
2 things release dower: the D's, death and divorce. That's it.
Okay. Okay.
So this woman was alive, this man was alive, had a spouse who was alive, and dower, she wanted, so we had to find her, try to get her to sign off on dower and do a corrective deed. Most of the time, people will do it, but legally, she has an interest in the property and she wanted paid.
Yeah,
From
like that was my
1974.
next question. Like, what happens if she doesn't pay, what happens if she doesn't sign off?
You're gonna have to come to some sort of financial agreement because she owns stake in that house. And this happens all the time. And another thing that we're seeing is people who are scammers, who are finding properties. And again, this is why title companies are important. They're finding properties, they're going into contract on these properties and sending us over a deed where it shows, that somebody bought this house in June, and the deed is legit, looks legit. It was
Mhm.
signed by a notary who they're in cahoots with, but it's signed by a notary.
Yeah.
And when we got this deed, and again, this was at another title company and it got missed too. When we looked at the deed, something was just very fishy because there were so many liens. And I said to the wholesaler, I said, you realize your client buying this is going to have all these deeds because this was quit claimed and all those deeds transfer. And he was too eager. He was like, oh yeah, that's not a problem. I thought that was odd. So we started doing a little bit more investigating, and we found out that the deed was forged, that the person who owned the house had been dead for 15 years.
Wow.
And when they filed the deed at the county, nobody looked at that. Nobody paid any attention to that. And so he was hoping, I don't know, he was just hoping that we wouldn't dig, and the whole deed was forged. The whole thing was illegal. We actually had him turned in.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's why it's important.
Absolutely. Well, you just saved a lot of headaches for the person buying the house. So yeah.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know. Can you walk me through the process of what the title company does? As soon as like you get a paperwork, a contract. So you guys send somebody out to the courthouse to do like a title search or something. What does that look like?
So basically, as soon as a contract comes in, the very first thing we do is order a title search. Depending on the county, Franklin County, Delaware County are a little quicker than some of the outlying counties. Usually takes 24 to 48 hours to get that back. And what they're sending back to us is a pretty detailed report that shows every single thing that's ever happened on that property. And another thing, Gary, that I don't think people understand is they think that when you're doing a title search, that sorry, I have allergies. Ugh, that we're just searching the property. So we're
Yeah.
searching someone's name. And so if you have a very common name, like John Smith or Robert,
Hmm.
Smith, anything like that,
Yeah.
anyone who has a lien is going to come back on that report. And I don't think people really understand that, Gary. I think it
Okay.
kind of freaks people out.
And then how
And
do you
so,
like John Smith? How do you cipher from John Smith to John Smith to
exactly.
the right
So
one?
what we have to do, right? So that's why we're always asking for those authorization forms. So when your back to your original question, when your transaction comes in, we go ahead and run a search, and our team will send out a welcome letter to make everyone know that, hey, this property's at Bridge Title. And attached to that is an authorization form for the seller. And on there, the seller will put their social security number. That's how we can decide. Now, some things are easy. So if it's John A. Smith and all the liens come back as John Smith or John F. Smith and your client's name is John A. Smith, we can go ahead and get rid of those. But if it just says John Smith, then we need to do it by the Social Security. And that authorization form, depending on where the lien is sent to the Attorney General. And the Attorney General sends back a report that says, hey, this client is not yours or is yours.
Okay.
That's why it's kind of important, especially if you're going to do a cash transaction or something that's closing fast. If you have a great relationship with your title company, you can ask them to do a prelim report first. Because right now with COVID, the Attorney General is running like 14 to 20 days behind.
Oh
And
wow.
so if something comes up, yeah, they're very slow. And so if something comes up on title, even though we're all 99.9% sure it's not your person, if you run the
Yeah.
title work prior to actually going in contract, we can get ahead of it by several days.
Okay. Very good. So you kind of mentioned a little bit of like the COVID. How are you guys dealing right now with the the coronavirus and everybody being home? I've heard of virtual closings. How does that type of stuff work?
Well, it's funny because virtual closings has kind of been in the works for a while, and this pandemic sort of pushed it to the forefront. The problem with virtual closings is that the majority of the lenders are not on board and are not able to do that.
Okay.
And they're rushing now to be able to do that because people are saying, well, I want to, work with a lender who can do virtual closings. So on the buyer side, it's way trickier. On the seller side, it's easier. We're able to send over documents electronically. However, the deed and the affidavit still needs to be a wet signature, unless you do what's called a RON, online notary. So for us right now, what we're doing is kind of a little bit of a hybrid. If somebody really wants to not come into our office and they're a seller, we can send all the docs to them via electronically or even old fashioned, print them out and FedEx them to them and have a label and they can send them back. And then we send a notary out to their house and just stand outside real quick to notarize the two documents. As far as Franklin County, each county is different. Franklin County does not allow e-filing of deeds. So even if you do an online deed, somebody still has to take it down there. And I just had an online deed that was from another title company and the county rejected it. So it's still picky.
Okay.
So that's why we still like to do the deed and the affidavit, still send a notary to the person. So it's kind of like a hybrid closing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. And then obviously, you do have like the mobile notaries that go out and do paperwork as well. And you've been doing that for
And
a
we
while
always
now. Not
have.
Yeah.
We
This is
always
nothing
have.
new.
Yes.
Now, you guys were
Yes.
probably one of the very first companies in the in Ohio that were doing that type of stuff, right? Because not every title
Correct.
company would send out a mobile notary.
Correct. So one of our taglines is we don't just want your business, we want to help grow your business. And it was very important to the owner of my company, Sean Stevens, when he left his former title company and started Bridge, is he wanted to do the things. He wanted to make sure that the things that annoyed him or other customers that we didn't do anymore. And one of them was to be able to sign anywhere, anytime, anywhere in the state of Ohio, actually, anywhere. We do all counties, and we are licensed in West Virginia now too. So we've done closings at 6 in the morning, and we've done closings at 9:30 at night. We've done closings at football games, in prison, in people's homes, and barns.
In prison?
Every yes.
Who's going to the prison to do these signings?
You'd be surprised, because a lot of the times we have to get a power of attorney signed so that we can sell something. So we'll go out to the prison and do it there.
Yeah.
Kevin, our one.
I guess that kind of makes sense. I mean, just what's that?
Kevin, our one notary. We usually send men, not women, to the prisons usually.
Okay. Yeah. So speaking of Kevin, he done a closing for me one time, and he's probably gonna be embarrassed if he watches this video. But they have an ongoing joke in the office now of Kung Fu Kevin, right?
Yes. Somebody decided to do their karate moves at the closing. So it's always I'll tell you what, you see something every single day. But
they weren't attacking him; they were just messing with him, though. But yeah. So.
But on that same line of talking about my boss and what he wanted to do, I think another thing that people don't realize is that part of the title fees are regulated by the state. So it doesn't matter what title company you go to, the title insurance, the recording fees, the conveyance fees are all regulated by the state or the county. And I think a lot of times people don't shop around and realize that there's a huge discrepancy in prices. So the other fees, like the deed prep and the search and the CPL and binders, all of those kind of things, those can be regulated by each individual title company. They can actually choose to make it any amount they want, but it has to be the same for everyone. And so one of the things my boss did is he didn't like that some title companies, I call it padding, they padded those fees, or they added. So he only charges the customer what we're charged. And there's significant differences. So especially in Ohio, like title fees in Cleveland are way higher than here. So you can have a title company based out of Columbus do something up in Cleveland, and it's still our Columbus fees.
Okay. Now, why are they much higher?
Really want to get it. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Oh, why are they higher in Cleveland? I mean, it's a 2-hour drive from Columbus to Cleveland.
It's because people kind of dictate fees in one area, and then the rest of the title companies sort of follow along. And I think the one thing I really like to tell people that I don't think they realize, we have some of the lowest fees in Columbus, or in the state, actually. And so you'll have another title company say, hey, we'll match those. We'll beat bridges, or we'll meet them. That's actually illegal. That's a RESPA violation in the state of Ohio. Because it's also a fair housing. Because if you think about it this way, Gary, somebody can come back and say, why did you give the white person, the black person, the gay person, the older person a different rate than someone else? Yeah. So a title company can charge whatever they want, but it must remain the same. Like, you can't even be like, hey, Gary, you're my friend, so I'm going to cut you a deal on your personal house. That is illegal in the state of Ohio.
Okay. So do title companies post these fees?
Most do. Most people post their fees. And a lot of title companies do break the rules and lower fees, but they wouldn't do it in writing. If somebody, if I was like, hey, I heard you did that. And then we have most title companies have their fees or an app, or a net to seller app, or a title quote on their website. And that's what we have, as well as and it's for the entire state. So as soon as you put the address in, it'll know. The only thing those apps usually can't do is discount for reissue rate, because it's not able to know that. So if you know that you're going to get a reissue rate, you can take whatever quote we give you and take 30% off the title insurance.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, I know you mentioned earlier that you guys have like 25% of your clients are like real estate investors, and then
Mhm.
so what are some of the trends you guys are finding right now, especially with the coronavirus going on, and tell us a little bit about like the trends and what you're seeing in the future and stuff with how things are going to change for title companies as well.
Well, Columbus, we're a lucky city because we had our largest month in March and April amidst COVID. We are still super busy. Granted, some of that came from refi. The rates went down, so there was a lot more refi. But as far as the investor world, I see very little change. Very little change. People are still buying and selling and flipping. What I have noticed is that some people are Airbnb-ing their properties, which is a little bit
Okay.
different, holding them. Have you seen that too?
I'm starting to see a little bit more of it where people, the Airbnb is starting to become a little bit more popular. Yeah.
Yeah, and
So,
some people are holding on to them a little bit, because they're definitely, at least in Columbus, there's still a rental problem. I mean, affordable renting is still hard here.
yeah.
So the only real change that I've seen is that people tend to maybe not flip them as fast, either
Okay.
hold them or Airbnb them. Hmm.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's
How
good
about up?
news. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I said, how about Mansfield? Are you seeing differences?
Mansfield, I'm starting to see more people kind of, it seems to be slowing down, in my opinion, with the flipping, anyways. I don't see as many active wholesalers. I don't see, I'm still seeing some flipping going on. But I think like some of the new builders that I've got, they actually
Hmm.
are not just building spec homes anymore. They're more of, hey, it's got to be in contract to build. So some people were pretty scared there for a little while. They weren't sure what was going to happen with Trump a while back. They wasn't sure what's going on with the
Right.
coronavirus. Interest rates were jumping up and down. So it was kind of scaring a lot of people. But I did see some new builds in like downtown Mansfield started up. And so, which
Yeah.
is, in my opinion, is actually really good in downtown Mansfield because the market is so different in downtown Mansfield versus Columbus, and really like Cleveland too.
Oh,
So, yeah.
well, another thing that's interesting too that I'm seeing a lot of is we have a lot of out of this country investors. And so, not that I'm knocking Mansfield. Mansfield
Mhm.
probably isn't coming up on the radar in the international community. So a lot
Yeah.
of the it doesn't mean it won't. I'm just saying a lot of my
Mhm.
investors are from other countries and are
Yeah.
buying up houses in Columbus. So that's another trend too. I have a lot of closings in Israel and other countries.
Wow. I mean, that's pretty impressive. So,
Oh, a lot
yeah.
actually. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. And it's sort of funny when the more I meet them in person and talk to them, I'm like, did you guys just have this meeting in Israel and everyone decided, hey, Columbus is the place?
Yeah. Why
And
Columbus, Ohio? Yeah. So I
like I
met,
said, it's go
yeah,
ahead.
I met two investors this in the last probably 30 days. One guy from Utah, literally moved to Mansfield,
Mhm.
Ohio, and bought 100-unit apartment complexes. And that he moved there because and that's one of the reasons I asked why Mansfield. And he said, "Well, my investments are there." I said, "Well, why are you
Mhm.
investing in Mansfield?" He said, "Well, my rate of return is much higher than any place else I can find right now." And then there was a guy from
Yep.
Alaska as well that moved to Mansfield and is buying up a lot of properties as well. But basically, he's saying the same thing. He can buy investment properties there at a much better rate and get a much better rate of return. So, yeah. So I think
And
there's some things going on
that's
in
what we're
Ohio.
seeing.
Yep. So,
They say that
um,
Columbus is perfect.
yeah, and there's a news article out of the Columbus Dispatch, I believe, a couple months ago, where there's over $1 billion being put into downtown Mansfield or downtown Columbus with all the new builds, like the sky rises that they're building and everything.
Yes, and it's funny too because outside of the United States, I would say another hotspot for investors are people from California, and because they're just blown away by the house prices, what you can get. So I have a lot of California investors as well too. A lot.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Now, what kind of like back to the title a little bit. What kind of like horror stories are you like running into, or have you ran into from title company, dealing in this type of a business?
I would say besides the two that I told you, the whole dower issue. So I mean, I cannot stress that enough. So people have to make sure that when they have quitclaim deeds that they have dower, that it says the marital status. Unfortunately, whenever you have a booming area, there's also people that take advantage of people. So there are a lot of, we have some, and it's a hard thing when you're in the title company because we're representing no one really. We're a third party.
Yeah.
So even though you might send me the deal, Gary, and I consider you my client, obviously we're just as equal to you as we are the buyer.
Yeah.
But what we're seeing right now is people taking advantage. So, for example, especially in downtown in some of the Blythe areas of Columbus, some of those houses have been left to the parents own them, and they were left to the
Hmm.
children, and the children have
Yeah.
drug problems, and wholesalers or investors are getting them on a bad day and getting them to sell their house for $5,000 or $8,000 when it's worth way more than that. Um, and it's hard as a title company because it's a contract, somebody signed it, and but a lot of
Yep.
times once they get to the table and they realize what's going on. I mean, we've literally had a girl who couldn't even sit at the table because she needed to go out to the car to shoot up, and then those are the kind of things that are sad and where we don't want to be a part of it. So there is a little bit of that
Yeah.
abuse, people taking advantage of people,
Yeah.
especially with subject to deals.
Okay. Well, tell us a little bit about subject two. Like, what exactly is subject two? Some of the people may not be
So,
familiar with.
well, you tell them a little bit more about subject to, and I'll tell you why title companies aren't huge fans of them, but how we can do them. So you're the expert on subject to, Gary. You know
Yeah.
more than I.
I love subject to deals. So, give me 1 second. I gotta do this. Sorry, I had to
You're
shut
fine.
my door. I had people coming into the office. So, but subject to deals, I love subject to deals myself, especially as an investor. But there are some good and bad on it. But subject to is basically
Yes.
we're essentially taking over a mortgage from the mortgage holder. So whoever holds the mortgage, the seller, and we're taking over the mortgage and making payments on that. And so there's good and bad to it. If you're a respectable investor like myself, you want to make sure that you're making payments on time and things of that nature, so that it doesn't affect the person that actually still has the mortgage, because the title comes to my name still, right? And then the
Correct.
mortgage stays in the person's name that got the house originally. So um, why would somebody really do that? Why would they, maybe they had financial trouble, maybe the house wasn't worth the
Hmm.
value.
Hmm.
I mean, there's
Hmm.
lots of reasons why people do that, and we do it all the time. So it's an
Hmm.
option for somebody to sell their house, and I've saved people from foreclosure by doing something of that nature and
Oh,
paid their
100%.
yeah. So,
and and
but
and that and you hit the nail on the head. So from a title company's perspective, you're talking about a client who's going to deed over their property
yes,
without paying off the mortgage, and somebody is going to make those payments. So from a
yes,
title company perspective, at least with us, we prefer to do subject twos with people we know, like, and trust, because how do
mhm.
I know that you don't have 100 subject twos and your monthly payments are ridiculous? And can you, no, seriously, can you
Yeah,
afford to pay all these? Um, and so we prefer to do those with people that we know, like, and trust. And for us, it's we just want to make sure that and if you're an upstanding person like yourself, Gary, it's very clear at the closing that they're understanding what's going on, that this mortgage is
yeah,
not being paid off, somebody is taking it over. There are
exactly.
some unscrupulous people who prey on elderly or people who might have not you know special needs or not a high IQ, and they're not understanding that. And at our
Mhm.
title company, there's a document that makes it very clear that they're understanding what's happening. So we don't mind
Yeah,
doing them. And you're right, it is. I've seen people cry and be so happy because you have helped them in a
yes,
situation. but it's a matter of working with people that you know, like, and trust. And that's why building a relationship
Yep.
with your title person should be so much more than just doing numbers, because they can help
Yeah.
you too. The title company can help you too.
Yeah. So how can how can title companies help like real estate investors out? You mentioned a lot the virtual closings, the
Mhm.
mobile closings. What else can a title company do?
So, especially here in Columbus, I believe if you include all the lawyers, I think there's over 117 title companies. That's a lot of title companies competing for, the seller dictates title here. So, because of that, I sort of branched out into the wholesale world a little bit and the investor world. Um,
Yeah.
because it's not a niche that a lot of title companies really understand. Some do, some don't. Um, but what I have found is that I have to bring some sort of value to my clients besides doing great title work, because obviously, for the most part, everybody can do decent title work. So, from the traditional standpoint of a regular realtor or a regular person marketing, but you can help that with investors too. For example, I have a guy that I helped him do his postcards for a particular area where he's trying to buy houses. So a
Mhm.
title company can help with marketing and help pick up a portion of those printing costs and mailing costs. It's all regulated by the state on how much we can help, but we can design. We have an in-house marketing team. But mostly, I think where I feel like I'm standing out or how I help people is I am a connector of people. So I'm building relationships with other investors. So I'm able to say, hey, this guy's got this property and I know this buyer. And
Yeah.
helping connect buyers and sellers together in the investing world, I think is really what's helped. And then quarterly, I've been putting together some events because I think sometimes for investors, you're not treated the same way as regular realtors, as far as like, why shouldn't you have a happy hour with the title company? And
Yeah.
I like to
Oh,
put
sure.
together, no, seriously, I think people think about realtors all the time. They don't think
Mhm.
about investors. So I like to
Yep.
put quarterly events together because as much as it's fantastic that we can all talk online, I think sometimes it's nice to meet people face to face, shake hands, build
Absolutely.
connections, and you
Yep.
can tell a lot from getting to know someone. So I think that's where I feel like I kind of stand above and beyond. And then thirdly, working with a title company that has a great legal department, because usually with investor deals, you got probate issues, you might need power of attorneys, you have somebody might need to draw up a subject to mortgage, or write the contract. So dealing with a title company that understands those.
Oh, you there? We
Whoop,
lost you.
we're back.
Oh, I'm back.
I'm back.
So, all right.
So dealing with, having the legal help, and so any client that works with us has access to our legal department, because they tend to be a little trickier sometimes.
Awesome. Well, I mean, that's good to know. I know, and I don't know if I really expressed this to you a whole lot, but you guys helped me with a lot of my contracts and maybe not even known it. Because, most people, I think when they sell a house, the concept is you have to have a realtor to sell your house, right?
Right.
Or if you don't do it, then if you sell it on your own, you got to do all this paperwork and do it out of the courthouse by yourself. Where every one of my transactions, I say I use my title company, and I'll even give them like
Hmm.
your guys' number. And I know I had a couple clients reach out to like you yourself, call up to verify you're a legit title company.
Hmm.
So it's helped me in my getting contracts several times just by like, hey, I use this title company. This is who I use. Here's their phone number. Call them up and see where they're at. You know that
Because
we're
it's
legit.
scary.
You know.
Yeah, it's emotional. It's an emotional, scary thing, especially a lot of times with investors. They're dealing with people who may be in foreclosure or have issues, and they're already highly elevated in their emotional stance, and they want to make sure they're working with someone who cares about them. And
Yeah.
that even goes to even our closers. All of our closers are highly versed in these kind of contracts. and understand the emotional part of it. And then myself included. I mean, I'm available 24. I mean, last night I was just answering questions for an investors at 11:30 at night. So I think it's important to really build a relationship more than just, hey, here's my business, but really build a relationship with the title company you're working with so that they can help you through all of these different issues that kind of come up. Because something always
Yeah.
does, that's for sure.
Absolutely. So, all right, we are getting close to being out of time. Jennifer, we really appreciate you being on the show today with Bridge Title. Any last thoughts or words? How do they get a hold of you, Jennifer, if they want to reach out to Bridge Title?
Sure. Anybody can email me at jennifer@trustbridgetitle.com, or my phone number is 614-537-3096. And I apologize for the internet and the rainy weather connection, Gary.
Oh, you're good. Hey, thanks again for being on the show. We appreciate it, and we'll look forward to doing more business with you. So, all
I
right,
love
thanks,
what you
guys.
do.
Thanks. Absolutely. So, thanks, guys, for being on the show. We appreciate it, and thank you for your time.